Right. Sorry, folks on Zoom. All right. So, yeah, for Zoom, I don't have slides. My apologies. It was recently asked. All right. So you have a structure and whatnot. Now with Rails, you have autoload paths. You have two kinds of paths. You can autoload once or autoload on every change. In development, it has a file watcher. Whoa. And that's how it reloads. This is all fine. What's important is when you call reload in console, or when you're running in development mode with cache classes false or enable caching, they've changed the names. It doesn't load for assets, only your app directory, but there's a way to find out what exactly gets reloaded. Now, let me go to this. It's console. Yeah. Not everyone likes it. People prefer VS Code. All right. So when you start a console, this is what you get. You make some changes in your code and you do reload. Reloading yielded. Sorry, that's just something I added in one of the files. You don't see yielded, you just say reloading. You can also say reload, but don't show me that message. And it just, don't worry about the yielded. That's my modification. And reloads all your classes. Do what? A few things. This is only available in the console. So it's not a method inside Rails normal application framework. How do you know where it's defined? So where is it actually defined? How does it work? One of the things in IRB that we can do is show source of whatever method is defined in the IRB. It says me, okay, that's in one of the gens in Rails console app. So it's only available in the console app or Rails addition to the console, IRB console. All right, so we go. Oh, yep, I should be able to. Yeah. Right. So it just says where it's defined. I should also be able to do this. And I should also be able to, lots of shoulds. Go away. All right. Is this visible at the back? Cool. So it's telling me that's where it's defined. One of the gotchas that I recently encountered was if you're running Rails 7.2, it fixes IRB version to 1.13. The problem with 1.13 is, for some reason, show source doesn't work. And it just says definition not found. I was wondering whether it was my computer, but I tested it on my Linux machine. I tested it on this machine, and neither of them worked. So if someone knows how to make 1.13 IRB work with 7.2 Rails, especially with show source, that'd be great. The difference is IRB 1.13 added what do you call it? Extenders. So it allows you to extend IRB, and that's why Rails 7.2 is now using IRB 1.13, so it can extend it, extend the console, which I think I have. No, I haven't tried, but this is, I think, specific to IRB. This is Raphael's commit where he says when they move to 1.13. Prior to 7.2, yep.
Maybe it's like always question that is show source part of Ruby itself or
show source, I think that's IRB. It's yeah, Ruby. So funny enough, we can do that too. So it's part of IRB itself, and that's the extend command. So IRB has plenty of extensions. This is supposedly or supposed to work with 1.13. and Ruby, so Rails adds on to that, as Raphael mentioned, but it doesn't work in 1.13. So I'm using IRB 1.11 with Rails 7.1. And it's not a Ruby problem, as in it works on Ruby 3.3 and 3.3.3 as well. All right, so back to the app, we go to that file, and there we are. That's where it says reloading, and it's a reload. But here's the funny thing. Generally, I would say, okay, Rails application, it's an application. There's a reloader there, which I'm suspecting there's some class. Let's go to reload, Command B, takes me to reload. Yep. Yep.
Sorry.
Seriously? All right. Lots of stuff without any sense whatsoever. I think Adam realized that. Executed a wrap, puts yielded. That's just me thinking, does it ever get run? And there's a reason why I put it there, and I'll show you why. So it seems like when you call reload, it runs some stuff in an executor. Probably this is something that I really like about Rails. They create this executor stuff where you can run code, your application code, in threads without affecting the rest of the app. And that's what Rails does in the background. Any application code that's executed, they're all executed in an executor, which runs in a thread as a using concurrency. All right. So you would say, okay, executor or trap, yield executor is instance variable, which is also of type execution wrapper. And this is where I'm not sure why Rails is doing it. So we go, where's that? All right. So Rails defines a reloader, which it reuses for both development and console. One of the things Rails does for development, and unfortunately, I don't have anything to show particularly for that. It also uses a rack middleware, which triggers reloading when a request comes in. And so it does it in two different ways. One, it watches, there's a file watcher here, which I can get to. So it watches for changes in files. If there's been a change in a file, and I'll show you which paths it looks at, it calls a reload method. Well, it doesn't call reload, it actually has a callback hell, which I'll also show in a minute. So that's reloader, and reloader then gets its own executor, which is an executor, which is active support executor. And what's funny is that that executor is from the same, where is that? Execution wrapper, and so is reloader, same execution wrapper. But I think executor is more concrete class. It defines certain callbacks, prepare and unload. So back to the reloader method, it's just saying, okay, create a new reloader, run the instance, and once it's done, complete the instance. It's really doesn't telling us where do the classes go, or where do the classes get loaded. It took me a while to figure that out. I'm still working on it. That's why I said it's not a proper slides, and just said, okay, I'll show what I can. So one of the things that happens, and Adam, do correct me if I've gotten this wrong somewhere. From what I could figure out, the finisher module is where a lot of auto loading happens. Not just there; it also happens in dependencies. Dependencies in active support is where Rails defines all the engine-related dependencies or its own auto load paths that it needs to auto load. They all get defined here. So at the time of module definition or load, it auto loads that file, and it also loads via configuration. It eventually loads the dependencies in active support, where it defines all the autoloader, which is Lightwork now instead of Classic. And this is also where the paths are defined. And that was, and and I've lost it. Nope, we'll come back to that. finish it. Right. So when it's initializing in the initialization phase of Rails, it goes through some of the initialize like eager load, if you say should eager load, and it also adds prepare callbacks. Now, some of you may know in initialization phase of Rails, you cannot access your models or some other parts of auto-loaded hierarchy. So the way to do that is Rails adds a hook called prepare hook, which runs post initialization, post boot. That's where you can load user models, and I think it's also post configuration. So that's what it's doing there, and it's saying if eager load is there, run all these hooks and load defines the main autoloader. That autoloader has certain parts, which is also defining dependencies, which is there, all the parts. What happens in reload is just that. It during initialization phase, Rails hooks onto these callbacks in the reload, or the reload is defined, which is prepare and complete and run. Depending upon whether it's a development phase or in a console phase, it just calls onto those hooks using rack cache. Now, to see what actually is auto-reloaded in Rails, when you reload, it only accesses auto-load paths, same as development environment request cycle. It doesn't rerun initializers. Now, if you do want something to do with initializers that should be reloaded during the reload phase, you can hook into initializer hooks like prepare. And I think you might have to use that, or you may have used it. Yep. So auto-load paths, which are reloaded when we call reload, or when a request comes in development, it reloads. Right. Everything in apps except the 3 folders that it mentioned, and some other engines, royalties that it has, like actually mailbox controllers, and I think storage controllers. You will see it doesn't have lib. Lib directory doesn't get auto-loaded unless you specifically ask it to load lib, which one can do in config. So if I change this and say auto-load lib, except assets, task, and middleware, save it. Unfortunately, I have to restart it because this is an initialization. Still loading. There we go. And now it finally adds lib, except for anything else that I've ignored. That's what I've found so far. I know it's not probably what you were looking for, Adam, I'm not sure. But it's a callback hell. Now, how I know it's a callback hell is one of the things I like to do in IRB is to look at method call chains. And I got a trace point function. So I'll run that. Start trace call. What all it's doing, it's a method in my IRBRC. It's at every point in call, it's looking for when a call was made, and it's just printing out the file name, line where the call was made, and the method name. And it's beautiful because that once it finishes, so there's a lot of Zitebook reloading happening. It's not finished yet. There. And series of callbacks, all that have been set during initialization phase of Rails. So at the time of reload, none of the initialization code runs, only your app code gets reloaded. The way it does do that, that I sort of figured out so far using the dependency interlock file, it acquires a lock on the model. It unloads the model, and then there's one middle step that I forgot about, and then it reloads the model again. Problem in console is when you do that, if you have objects from previous definition of a model, the eigenclasses exist. So if you create a user A equals to user model, reload, make changes to the user model, reload, and create user B equals to user new, those two are not same classes because they're different eigenclasses in the console. And that's to do with Ruby, because Ruby, a class is not exactly a class. It's an object of type class. So the definition of a class which has been loaded in console, it's an eigenclass or a singleton class. So it exists in memory. Any object that was created for that still exists in memory. When you reload, a new object gets created for that, or new eigenclass gets created for the model. When you create a new object of that model, it's effectively a new, well, it is a new class. Something that don't quote me on it yet because I was going to try it, just didn't have enough time to try it. It's based on memory with active records. So the funny thing about reload is many Rails engines can also add on to these reload hooks. Active record does that as well. Active record adds a reloader hook, which allows you to call whatever model object you have .reload. It reloads that, reads the database again. It disconnects from the database, reconnects to the database, loads the object from the database, and gives you a new object. I have to test this because I'm purely basing this from memory. If you reload an old version of your class or the object of the old version of your class, it doesn't get the same stuff from the database because the definition of the object is still the old definition. So calling reload doesn't actually reload the columns. If you have added new columns in the database, it doesn't get that, which means you have to restart the whole application. That more or less what I have found so far. Like I was saying, I only started looking into this 2 weeks ago because also, funnily enough, I had a similar issue as Adam was about initializers, and I was making certain stupid decisions and running code in initializing phase that I should not have. And I was like, okay, it's not picking up in my console. So that's what I've found so far in the whole reload process. Yep.
Conditionally loads specific modules depend on the common request.
There is auto load if method. Conditionally execute. I have a suspicion that would be. Let's see something. You could possibly do could possibly hook into before and after class unload and load, and you could stop the chain. My suspicion, again, I haven't tested that because I only looked into before class unload. It allows me to run a block where you run something and you yield. So if I stop the chain, in theory, it should. Unfortunately, I haven't tested that yet.
Sorry if you already explained this, but it was lost taking. Do you happen to know how it knows which classes to reload?
It reloads everything in the auto load path. In console, so there's a gotcha. Only in console it reloads everything that's in the auto load path because that's how it's defined. However, in development phase, if you run, hang on, let's go back to the configuration. Eager load. In configuration, you can have cache classes, which is the old way of doing it. And I think new one is eager load false or true. What it does during that phase, if I can quickly see that, not prepare callback, not the finisher hook. There. It configures a file watcher. So with file watcher, it knows which class has changed and it loads that file.
So this doesn't need to be exactly how it works, but hypothetical, like conceptually, is it saying something like when you call reload, does it say go to Zeitwerk, say tell me all of the models that you've loaded, then we call it undefine the constant.
Unload the constant,
Yeah.
because in Ruby, you can unload what you've defined and reload that.
If eager loading is turned off, then Cyclope to just naturally eager load next time it's needed. Yeah, okay.
No, there was something that you were asking. No. How does it know what's been loaded? It does maintain that, which is it maintains a set of auto-loaded flagged classes. And that's how it knows what it's actually reloading.
Yeah, so even though the details are tricky, it's actually conceptually quite simple.
It's
Just runs through this.
Yep. But it just goes back and forth between its own executor, which also hooks into isolated execution environment, which is related to your other topic that I was also investigating. Actually, I started with that, then unfortunately landed into the reload side of things, which I should be able to see. I think it's called isolated execution. Once I can. Isolated execution state. And this is related to current attributes and thread and fiber local stuff. Basically, once it's done all its execution stuff, it starts calling the prepare and complete callbacks for the reloader class, which is defined by the initializers and so on and so forth. Which is why you cannot reload initializer files, because they are the ones initializing the reloading mechanism, and the fact that it doesn't exist in autoload path. Now that I say that out loud, I was thinking of what if I actually add the initializer files in the autoload path, but someone must have done it at some point. No. File watcher. There we go. Yeah, so sorry, it's not a great, wasn't a proper presentation, but this is, I hope.
It's great. I think
That's actually better than the slides.
I thought my life was that. Trust me, it's still, there's a lot to take in. Yeah, and you just keep on going through all the callbacks. If you think life is complicated, yes, that's all I have.